How you going to go with holding the mic?
Oh, terribly.
Now, how's this going to work?
Well, you literally just move him. Like, okay, well, yeah, he just gets
This is
anywhere.
perfect.
He can also be dragged to where you require him to be.
I love it. I love it. I'm also loving the chance we get to sit down and jump into this. And I'm putting the voice on to signify that we've started. So.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yep. Sorry, yes.
I've thought of so many ways of how to start this. And I just want to I think, I was thinking, what is the most outrageous question that can kick us off?
Oh, please, have you thought of one? Go outrageous.
What's the role of sex in organisations?
Oh, what a great question. No one talks about it.
No.
Even in the literature, so because I've studied organizational dynamics and we talk about psychoanalysis and psychology are really good at acknowledging sex as a factor in human interactions. Even in those places, people don't talk about it. What is the role of sex? Oh, I was sitting down with a fellow academic who is a consultant, and she was talking about a principle of thinking about teams, and a new thinker has come up with a new model of thinking about teams because all of the research has been on Freudian ideas of a team is structured like a family. So there are parents, and that's how authority works. And this researcher was looking at teams and saying that's not actually true. A lot of teams are not governed by an overarching hierarchy. There's a team where everyone's equal. So it's more like a sibling relationship. And that's actually how most teams work. And she said there were 2 rules, and I'm going to try to remember them, but the most important one is the first one, which is that in a team that is governed by more sibling-style relationships where everyone is equal but has different responsibilities, which is most teams, the number 1 rule is no murder and no incest. Or don't fuck and don't fight. Because in order to keep the relationships working, the relationships have to be equal. And if you are intimate with someone or you hate someone, it's going to be creating a distance that doesn't work. And that's the same in families. Like if you had siblings and your parents went away, when you're by yourselves, these are 2 very important rules to make sure that the family functions well.
And so what does the reverse cause? Because if there is suppression of sex, but it's in a dynamic that is not a family.
Yeah. Yeah, what does that do? I would imagine it goes somewhere. And I think we've worked in organisations where there's a bit of sexual chemistry between people in the team, and it does knock things out of whack. And I don't want to shame sexual attraction, and I know that a lot of people meet their partners in the workplace. But the fact you've got to acknowledge that if a team is working on something really difficult together, those relationships are going to have an impact on how people show up at work. 100%. And what's so interesting is I've been in situations. What happens when you think maybe sex is happening in a team that's working between people? No one comes right out and says it in a meeting because for very valid reasons. But what happens? People go to lunch and they start to have a little chat and they're like, I wonder what's going on over there. And so it still does something, but we can't. I don't know. I don't know how people would talk about it in a working relationship in a team, but it does something. It would do something. And even the tension, even the thought of it, you don't even need to do a thing. But we've worked in the theatre.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there is no guardrails. There was no guardrails. I'm sure there are organisations that have really well-defined structures, models, practices, values that
Yeah.
are enforced. But the line between relationships, play,
Yeah.
professionalism, work.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I wanted to speak to you, and why I think it's such a amazing topic to dive in through the lens of influence, because
Yeah.
that's the exploration that I'm on. How do we influence the world around us, the people in our world, in our work, in our family, in in a good way, in a way that kind of is about bringing them towards our values, or our even our emotional state or our psychology, influence them to understand, influence them to join us. And I think there's nothing more critical, particularly in a work sense, than looking at how organizations function together, and how that collection of people trying to influence their world can work in harmony in order to, achieve that objective, that goal, that mission, or just get along and function well as a group.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Your thoughts sparked off other thoughts in my head. And okay, so there's this concept in groups of pairing, that a really healthy thing can happen in a group as they're working on task, where two people, they pair. There's some magic between them. And they're like, oh, there's some creativity there. And then a group can actually overly rely on that pairing. And I'm not necessarily talking in a sexual sense. It's just like there's this creative back and forth, and then everyone in the group goes, oh, great. They'll pair and they will make something new to come that'll be this new creative idea. And when you think about what groups are trying to do, the connection to sexuality is really close, because what is a group trying to do? They're trying to bring something into the world. They're trying to make something, conceive of, it's in the language, conceive of something together. So, sorry to come back to your original question. In some senses, you could view any organization that's trying to do something as it being an inherently sexual, conceiving experience. Reproductive. Because also, and groups make other groups. And then also, we bring people into the group and we mentor them. Like, all of these things are like,
and we divorce, and we dissolve groups, and we move on to new, we form new relationships, and and
it feels, and the feelings are really close to it. I've been talking this week with my business partner about feeling grief about potential clients, a dream of what could be, and it is a bit like dating, and you get excited by them, and you're like, oh, this thing could happen, and then when it doesn't happen,
you tell people about them.
You
get
hurt,
excited.
Your feelings are hurt. So I think, and to link it to what you're talking about, because you are talking about influence, I have a particularly, sorry, am I going off on too much of a rant?
Please.
I have a particularly interesting relationship with the concept of influence, because I definitely think it's something that we need to talk about. But for me, influence, I think people hear influence and they think, how can I get people to do the thing that I want them to do? And that seems to be a fairly logical definition of influence. I don't think it works. 2, I don't think it's particularly wise. And 3, I don't think it's particularly ethical, because people would argue that I have a lot of influence, but I would say what I do is just be really clear about what I want, what I think should happen, and then make myself open to that other person influencing me and changing what I would do. And then I influence them, and then they influence me, which is like, I'm actually not trying to get to the end that I want. I'm suggesting that end. And then I think influence is both influencing someone else, but being influenced at the same time. That's actually what makes magic. It's not a one-way street. And I think most people just think of what they can do, which is, I don't think it works in any human relationship. even like selling a business. Like I'm thinking about it now, like when we've gone out to the market and gone, you should do this thing. And then people go, but that doesn't work. And we're like, no, you should do this thing that we say. And that doesn't fly. Like, because it's not being responsive to what the other person is bringing in.
Yeah. What do you do?
Well, interesting, coming from our friendship started in the theatre. I would say the main influence in how I show up to everything as a performer, but as someone working with groups, is clown. And for the uninitiated, clown is not Krusty the Clown, big hair. It's a form of theatre where someone comes onto stage and attempts to remove their psychological armour and let an audience really see them in the act of not knowing what comes next. And if I am working with a group and I want to move towards an aim, what I do is the same as that clown work. Remove the armour and actually be honest and actually really be with a person and really connect with them, and then work on developing something together. And sometimes that doesn't work. A lot of the times it doesn't. But if we're going to get somewhere that's useful for both of us, that's the only place to start from. So it's not even like I'm trying to influence. I'm just trying to connect to the other person legitimately and honestly so we can figure out what it is that we're trying to do together.
That whole concept is so challenging to me and how I have gone about my business and my whole kind of professional life, because so much of what I've learned from working in management consulting, the arts, even now in agency land, is that you go out to the market or the client and you go, I know what's coming in the future.
Yeah.
This is my point of view and this is what is the right path for you to take. Or if we're in a sales cycle, it's like, other companies like yours are doing this.
Yeah.
You can also be like that if you
Yeah.
trust me and come with me, because I know I've got all of the knowledge.
Answers.
I've got all the answers.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is the most authentic, genuine, true way to connect and work with someone.
Yeah.
Should be, I don't know what this is. I don't know where we're going.
Yeah.
But what? Like, what comes next then?
Well, I mean, this is why, we've got to bear in mind that I am not the business success. So this might be a very terrible idea.
I'm doing this is what, month 9 of Playgrounded? Or...
It's true.
Yeah.
And we think this is true, but we actually think that idea of I know all the answers, we call bullshit on that. Particularly in the realm of work that we do, because we're working with group dynamics. Now, this might be different in other industries, but there is no certainty about the future. We just went through a global pandemic, and if you had have asked people 6 months earlier, would the world have closed down? Like, we've got to take the lessons that there actually is no certainty. And so when you go to someone and you say, do these things and it will definitely work for you, I actually think that's a lie. And I think people kind of know it's a lie. But we as a society are so tuned into and desire the authority. We desire daddy. We have a deep desire to be like, come solve all the problems. Come. And it's usually packed in, dare I say, the people that are out there doing the big, you got to do this. Here are the 10 things that you got to do. If you looked at those people, I imagine that most of them are male-shaped. And it's about a dependency model of thinking that people tap into that is deeply rooted in our unconscious as a group. And I think it's manipulation. And
it's also self-perpetuating, and the business models that they use create a sense of dependency
on them. Yeah. And okay, so I've been seeing a psychologist for 13 years, and when I came to see her, I was in a very bad way. I was in a breakdown. About 5 years in, I started, like, the work did its thing, started to feel better. And then one day I came in and I said, I feel this urge to thank you. And then the moment I went to say it, I saw her face go like that. And I went, but I also don't want to, because you didn't do it. Like, I did it. And she was like, that's the point. The point is, how can I help you to figure it out for yourself? Because if you leave me and you're reliant, dependent on me for the rest of your life for your mental well-being, that's bad and unethical. What I've got to do is help you to figure out how to help yourself. Now, that's a much harder sell to make with people, because it's really easy to be like, all the models they do for influence and sales is like going hard with the answer. And I just don't buy it. I do think that there are people that have knowledge that if they get to know me, get to know my problems, will be able to help me to figure out the answers for myself. And that's super useful. But that idea of guiding, mentoring, working together, collaboration, these are all slow solutions that involve being vulnerable, particularly from the seller or the person coming out and saying, I've got an idea that can help you. It's vulnerable because you've got to front up and say, like, look, I don't know if this will work. And that's really, like, that's a hard thing to do, because a lot of people want certainty. But then you come across people who totally get it. And when you say that, they're like, oh, am I allowed to swear?
I mean, we already have.
Oh, yeah, have we?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to use the big one. You know? I was about to say fuck.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that the big one? Is that the biggest we can go?
Let's not go into the biggest one. Actually, can I digress?
Yeah.
When I worked in an organization, we realized that we were a swearing organization. And part of my job was to welcome new people into the organization. And it was to make overt the things that are never spoken of in a group. Because often when people enter a new group, they're nervous about just sending signals that show that they don't understand the group. So my job was to explain all of the unwritten things of this work group. And then we had to sit down because we decided we were a swear-friendly organisation, which meant that me in the people team, in order to do that, we had to define it, because we were like, are we saying all swears? And then people went, yeah. And then I started dropping some swears, and they went, oh, not those ones. And I was like, so we're not actually saying all swears. So we actually had to, and it was the best meeting, we had to list all the swears and then pick which ones we were comfortable and which ones we weren't. And so rather than saying we're a swear-friendly workplace, we would say, oh, we're a shit and fuck-friendly workplace.
Yep.
Which means you can say them if you want, but you don't have to say them, but you might hear them. That means if you've got ears around you that don't want to hear it, you know, you've got to make sure that you let people know, da-da-da-da-da. But to this day, that meeting was one of the best meetings of my entire life. It was real good.
But boundary pushing, you know, or boundary finding is what that's about, right? And any family organization, you know, is held by boundaries.
Yep.
And that's something that you're big on and you know, help create or explore and define so that we can get on with doing great things together.
And I think this does actually tie into what you're talking about with influence, because, I mean, essentially the thesis I'm coming in with is that influence is two-way, and that essentially is collaboration. And so the way you can influence is by truly entering a collaborative state where you're willing to be influenced at the same time. And how do people enter into that when you meet them? They need to feel safe. And we talk so much about psychological safety, which is so awesome, but very little is said on how do you actually do psychological safety. We know that you should. We know that it does these cool things, but doing it is very difficult because there is no one answer. And again, if you went to a person that was like, do these things and you're going to have psychological safety, massive amounts of bullshit, because safety is subjective, as in everyone's safety is totally different. So why am I talking about this? Because one of the ways that you send the signal to be tested by the person to see if you are actually safe is you are very clear on what your boundaries are. You make that overt to them when you're interacting with them, so as they can see where the fences are, and then they feel safe. When you don't make any of it clear, like, it's great, we just do all these things, we are a swear-friendly workplace, and you drop the C-bomb in the middle of a meeting and someone goes, whoa, then you're caught out. Then what do you learn? You learn, shut the fuck up and be really careful with what you say. And also, this person just tricked me.
Yeah.
They just told me I was safe and I wasn't. And so, like, to create a place where you can do that two-way street of influence, thinking about what the boundaries of the group are, what are flexible, what are solid, what are up for grabs with the new person coming in, because you want your culture to change when a new person starts to work with you. And there's zero rules, because like there's zero hard and fasts, because different people are going to have different things that you're constantly going to have to be checking in with. And this is like lifelong work, and people would please like a dot point list of 5 things to do so that they can feel that they've ticked that off their list and they can move along.
They like that list, and then they don't follow it anyway. Because no one can follow 5 things and remember them and implement them in that moment when they're when emotions come into play or pressure comes on, and or the context changes. So can we go back to our company vision and our values? And I used to work at Apple, the Apple store, and when they had the lanyards around, remember that was like the Apple store look. Inside the lanyard was the Apple Store credo. And it was like, I can't remember it now, but it was along the lines of, we help people pursue their creativity, we are collaborative, and da-da-da-da. And so in that, it took all the staff wearing the credo, and literally in conversations we were trained to look at it and go, does this
match
uphold this, and does this decision? And that was great. Because it was there, it was reinforced. It was like having the 10 Commandments up on 10.
Are we talking Judeo-Christian? There are 10. On the stone tablets.
On the stone. Because it's there. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'll check on that. But really, it doesn't hold anyone to account. It doesn't allow for flexibility or exploration or
and you're always going to find this with people that study like systems psychodynamics, is we're always going to say both things can be true. So when I hear that story, I'm like, there are really cool things in that it actually lives and breathes, and someone has an artifact that they can hold and they can think about, does this uphold values? Now, that's really great. What you're touching on right at the end there is when it becomes so set in stone that it never moves and changes, that's also a problem. And this is why it's always a balance, because actually what you want is someone one day to go, does this uphold the values? Look at it, see that there is something that they then have to do because this value doesn't actually work anymore, and then go to authority and be like, we've got to change our values because I just had someone come in and they asked me to do stuff and it doesn't fit this and it's not the value we want to live. And that is influence. Now, I don't mean that person then runs roughshod and says it must be done, but they go to influence, and then they are ready to be re-influenced by someone that says, actually, no, that doesn't work. Or actually, it does. But it's the collaborative effort. And this is why I said at the start, I've got a weird relationship to it, because I often think people are using the word influence to just mean, I've figured out a thing, I'm right, and I'm going to go make that thing happen, which scares me.
That's how I'm coming into the world. I'm realizing, speaking to you, like I'm just being honest with myself. As I said, like that's my mode. That's the thing. Okay, how can I come up with something that is a point of view or a,
Yeah.
some way, and then also like how do you fall into line with that, to be blunt?
Yeah.
How do you do what I want you to do?
Yeah.
Sign up with me,
Yeah.
follow me,
Yeah.
pay attention to me.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
talking to my mum here, but like,
Yeah.
but that's
Which I
like,
try to do too. I'm saying all this stuff now. What am I doing out in the world? Trying to present a point of view about how something should be done.
and so this is the art, like,
Yeah.
so the nuance of art and the ambiguity of art is, in my mind, it's this exploration
Yeah.
of chaos, trying to find either, it's twofold, find order or a way through chaos, or an understanding perspective of chaos, or throw chaos into something that we
Yeah.
presume has order
Yeah.
and structure, but it allows us to look at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I want to throw that into the mix of influence, because I completely believe, or completely along with your philosophy,
Yeah.
but in practice,
Yeah.
ha-
Yeah.
wha-
And I've come across that. So there are people that have, and it's so great because if you're going to give people the permission that there is no one right answer, even the answer I'm saying is not right. Because there's a world in which really, I can envisage a human that comes up with one way of doing it and goes, you should do it this way, that fills people with safety and allows them to see a beacon that they move towards that's amazing and does amazing change in the world. So even as I say everything, I also doubt what I'm saying. And I think that's kind of unfairly, I'm doing that thing where I'm saying that's the thing that I'm talking about. Like that you need to be open to what it is that you are trying to influence, to figure out if what you're doing is actually the right thing to do. And then if you really believe it, yeah, by all means, get on a fucking soapbox and yell it from the rooftops. And I do get like that about things where I'm like, this is what you're doing is fucking unbelievable. You don't do that. It is very bad. I think, and sometimes as a criticism of myself, I'm too quick to stop myself before I go out with that stuff. Because the last thing that I want to do is push an opinion which I haven't fully... This is why I do academia, because you get to write a 16,000 word essay. I was writing an application for a thing the other day. It's now 5,000 words. And I'm sure they don't want to read 5,000 words. But if anyone asks me a question, I have to be like, here are the
it's covered.
19 different versions of this. But I do think if you are going to lead, so you're going to make a change, you owe it to the people that you're going to have thought about some things before you show up and go, this is right. You know?
Yes. And in order to reach the people in the first place,
I know.
how does sitting on either side of the fence and having a well-rounded and balanced view get their attention? Because this is a great example. A great example is Sally, my wife, who is a sleep consultant for babies, and she's a pediatric nurse. She's studied the science, the research behind pediatric sleep. All of her techniques and approaches are informed by that practice, and all of the risks and the challenges are all expressed in all that she does. She has mentors that are sleep doctors and literally have done that research. There's a great piece of content the other day that one of these doctors shared around the misinformation and the fear in the world of baby sleep. And the fact of the matter is that someone who keeps asking him for where's the research on this, and he's like, well, I've actually done the research. My name's on the paper.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
He can say that until he's blue in the face, but someone who comes out and says, cry it out is dangerous for your child.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
ruining the child's psychology. They're going to
Yeah.
feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Like that one sentence
Yeah.
will cut through more than 50 videos on the research behind safe sleep. Because if you're a researcher and if you are coming from a authentic place, you need to show that there are multiple sides to this conversation. There are risks involved. There are side effects, you know. But in the world that we live in the digital world that we live in, the only thing that cuts through is certainty.
Yeah.
And client statements like declaratory statements that say this is
Yeah.
what you should look out for.
Yeah.
You know, have you felt this before? No, but yes, maybe I have.
Yeah. And in the land that you work in, because I've been trying to start a media empire and
doing a good
influence
job.
people with
Yeah.
posting of things. And the dilemma that we get to is I initially... So it's good for the story, so I'll tell it this way. The first thing I produced was a 10,000 word document, and I recorded it, and it went for an hour and 30 minutes. And I was like, I can't possibly say this idea in less than an hour and 30 minutes. I then made a 7-minute epic poem. And then I was like, oh, that's pretty short. I managed to get heaps of concepts in. It was great. And then it's like 7 minutes. You might as well have written War and Peace. Got them down to 4. Then I set myself the challenge of just saying one point of research that was not mine, that was other people's, in 1 minute. Did that. And then I was like, I'm starting to get there. And then someone gave us feedback and they're like, a minute? What are you talking about? It needs to be 10 seconds long. And I was like, how? How do you express any nuance? And you don't. You say a declarative point, like that's the thing that you do. And okay. Like, okay.
But I think, but the thing that we run up against as academics, performers, is that we're so used to being in charge of the context of how we perform, the workshops that we create. You know, we control the parameters of that experience, and so the chance to fill it with all the ideas or all the journey, like we have that control over what we're talking about when it comes to TikTok, even LinkedIn, is that there's a set grammar for that platform that is true to that platform, and it's the way that platform functions. Yeah. And people talk a lot about it's how the users interact. You know, it's the the audience needs to see something like this, but it's not actually that. It's the algorithm, it's the platform itself that defines what the grammar is. Yeah. The functionality of the UX of TikTok, where it's this bang, 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 bang. The LinkedIn thing where we're going from text to video to this, and they're trying different ways to, like YouTube, where people are sitting down and, you know, these days literally watching it as a TV experience. You know? So there's another set of grammar for that channel, right? And so if we're not acknowledging that and making it within that grammar, and then you can change grammar, you can play with it, but at least being aware of what that is. We're going to try and fit a research paper into
and look, I like impossible challenges, and so the idea that you can get a point across in a way that is useful to someone in 10 seconds, I love that challenge. And mate, I'm actually not against the shortening. I went on the TikTok and I am blown away, and I'm going to say young people, the capacity of young people to create and share narratives and stories together by like playing on different themes that are coming out. It's mind-blowing, and I am full of hope for our future, because that generation is doing things with storytelling that have never... It's a whole different genre of it. It's amazing. And I think there's real power in it. And I'm just thinking this thought now, so it's not at all thought through. I think when I go to TikTok and I see what's great there, yes, they are short, but they are conversations. The ones that I loved are all building on the next thing. So it's not them like they're making their own 10-second narrative. They're not. They're making 10 seconds of a piece of narrative that goes for freaking 9 hours. Because if you watch the growth of all of the jokes that they make in it, you'd have multiple feature-length films to watch how it grows. And I don't think we're ever going to stop liking big ideas. I just think we're potentially going to access them in different ways. And I think that's been really humbling for me, is to go, I've got all these big ideas. And really, I must admit the arrogance and the ego involved in, I make things. And I think every second is fucking gold. And I love it. Like a canary in a cage. I look at myself and I'm like, oh, it's so clever how it twists around. But like clown, when you train to be a clown, you walk on stage, and if the audience does not like you, you cannot say, yeah, but you don't get comedy. You're like, no, you're right. And I think the humility for me to come forward and go, actually, how am I being helpful? I can put art around it, but what's the thing? Because I'm deeply connected to, like, I get really sad when I think of groups, particularly working groups, where there is so much pain and it's so hard to work and people have trauma at work, or they're working really well, but they can't make the change that we need in the world. Like, solving many big problems that we face. That makes me deeply sad. So what's the tiny little thing that can be gifted that may help someone move somewhere else? Being helpful, and then trusting that if those people find it helpful, they will come and have a longer conversation. And then that's where bigger, more rounded thoughts can come in. And and one of the things that you said in prepping for this interview is you were talking about ethics. And I think that's, for me, the ethics is not entering into the same, dare I say it, patriarchal dependence building game that is about selling, you need me because Papa can take care of you. Not going into that, but finding a way that still fits the form, still garners attention, is of direct assistance right now, and then trusting that people who need something that is more real for living in the world will then engage. And who knows if it'll work. You may interview me in 2 years' time and I'll be in a cardboard box underneath the bridge. but I can't see doing it the other way. Sorry, and can I keep ranting?
Yeah, I'm just giving you the space.
Yeah, great. Because having been a person who has studied teaching, studied performance, been a facilitator, all of these things have skills in them that have the capacity to be used for very evil purposes. Because once you learn that actually human beings, you can pull levers on people and you can make people do things they don't want to do. And it's actually not that hard to learn. There are courses you can go on that can teach you how to put words in certain orders that fuck with how people keep their defenses up about what they consent to. You can learn all these things. And theatre, more than anything, is about learning the art of manipulating people's feelings to get them to think something. And as someone who has gained that information, and then throw on top of that a facilitator, you walk into a room as a facilitator and people automatically throw levels of trust at you that they potentially shouldn't be doing because you're leading. We're herd animals, you know? Sorry, I'm going another digression. When you're a facilitator, a weird thing happens. You facilitate a day, you do some stuff, and then you go, all right, go out and do lunch or whatever. And if a large group of people are walking to a door, by the way, this is completely anecdotal, but I want to do research on it. As they go to leave the room, people will pause. If you're near them, they will pause at the door like they don't know how to operate a door. Now, that might sound weird, but anyone who's ever facilitated or led a group, I guarantee, think back now, there will be this weird time where you go to leave and then people at the door, they kind of do that and they're waiting. They don't know how to operate
Waiting
the door
to be led.
anymore
Yeah.
because their intelligence has dropped down so as they can be part of a herd and part of a group. And
or
and
their individuality,
yeah,
their ego.
it has to
it's,
drop back because you have to be part of herd, bad miking, part of herd mentality. And so you then have to open the door and people go, oh, that's how a door works. And you go, yeah. And when people do that to you when you're in a position of authority, you better fucking watch the way you use that trust that's been given to you, because you can do some things that are not super good. And when you see these big events where business leaders are getting up and talking about the things and playing the music and saying the big phrases, that is all like classic group manipulation
NLP.
techniques. Oh my God. And using the theatre of it. Like it makes you think in certain ways. And so...
Or makes you not think in certain ways. Is stripping away.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about the practice of theatre, like the whole form happens in music as well. Like where the intro, the prologue even, the please put your phone on silent is to make a moment in time where you've got to, pay attention.
Yeah.
All right, I'm here, I'm in this context. There's a way of me behaving in this context that is appropriate here, and I'm part of a theatre or a group. I can't just continue to do what I have been doing.
Yep.
But then as the piece goes on, or where the performance goes on, it's slowly stripping away the sense of reality or self through the levels of visuals, music, shapes, to a point where then we can take them somewhere.
Yeah.
You can't come in hard and fast from the start of a piece and shock people into coming on board. Everything is about that subtle manipulation into a sense of docileness to then take them somewhere.
And to a certain extent, these things are necessary. Like a teacher in a high school that has to do classroom management and get a point across, you've got to a certain extent, you have to use some of these techniques to be able to serve the need of the group. But what I would say is if you know those skills and you know how to do it, that's a power that you have to be really careful of. And also because it gives you shit data back. Like,
can you give me some examples?
So
being conscious of confidentiality and privacy.
Yeah. I can definitely talk in general. So I've entered groups as a facilitator, and you learn the hard way that if you're facilitating something where the group has got to discover something, if you come in hard and fast with a suggestion, that's the suggestion that will be done because people want to please. And my suggestions are usually really bad. And so then the suggestion will happen, the thing will be happen, then you leave the room, and once the magic is broken, you show other people, and they're like, that's genuinely a bad idea, or that doesn't work. Because 99% of my ideas do not work. And then I started working with other facilitators who genuinely did move out of the way and help the group to figure out something together. And every one of those ideas was streets ahead of any idea I could have thought of. And that's when, I forget if I read this somewhere, the best idea that you can get to when you're working in a group is not the idea that you walked in You know you've probably got a good one if it wasn't the one you thought of, particularly if you have authority, because that means that the group has actually collaborated on that. And in order to do that, you have to humble yourself and remove as much of your ego as is getting in the way of that work happening. And this is directly tied to influence, because when you know how to manipulate, you have to choose to switch off that part of yourself and do the things that help the group to figure out what's going on. Because one genius in a room will always be beaten by 5 normal humans in a room. It's collective intelligence. It's bizarre, and it is like this magic superpower that we have. But in a society, I'm getting really ranty now, in a society that's based on patriarchal domination ideas and that we need a hero, and the best thing to be is the solver of the problem, we don't tap into that. Well, some people do, but we fall into the trap of finding heroes. I mean,
why do we need leaders then in that world?
Good leaders shepherd the group to be working together on task. That's what they're there to do. And I'm not talking. I've got a few problems with the concept of servant leadership, because I don't think that's a great metaphor to be using for anyone within a group. But the best leaders I've ever worked with have been people that are genuinely there to serve the task of the group and to help that group in serving that task. And I will be honest, most of them have been women. And I've been one of the shit ones. Like it took me a while to learn this lesson, because I really liked being the hero facilitator. Loved it. Oh, you're just so good. You made this group do this cool thing. Oh, did I? Yeah, you're right. I did. I'm a genius. And really what you're there to do is actually shepherd the genius of the group to be held up. And that is a completely different way of thinking about the world, and a different way of thinking about who we reward. And if I can look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is all about mostly dudes being like, I'm a fucking hero.
Mm.
I turned my company into that fucking revenue thing at the start where people are like, I went from this to this and da-ba-da-ba-da. It is the equivalent of, it is business dick measuring.
Mm.
Like it's bizarre to me that is the language now. What you were talking about, learning language in the thing, that's the language that people talk about. I'm not saying that's not a valuable fact to have, but aren't you an amazing hero? Please make me feel better about myself by allowing me to give you a huge amount of money.
I drafted a post the other day saying, proud to announce that Chorus has cracked $1 million in revenue.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say that it's taken 5 years and very little profit in that time,
Yeah.
and like broken myself and probably some of my relationships and, challenged my marriage and stuff. But hey, $1 million.
Yeah.
It's all arbitrary. It's all that story that people are trying to make for themselves to look big, be big. But all in service of getting attention.
Yeah.
Because we're tricked into playing this attention game rather than what I want influence to be about, which is about the compassionate, sharing, improvisation of working together, and that I'm a great player and I want you to play with me because I have fun in what I do. And I see that you want to have fun and enjoy what you're doing.
Come play the game with me.
Let's play the game. And when you're talking before about the TikTok generation or making content, and that they've got these threads, it really strikes me as the biggest game of one word at a time.
Yeah.
Like, this is my response to you.
Oh, so great.
And then we just go around, and there's these global memes that happen and move. It's like this tidal ocean of ideas and stories and concept, and everyone's kind of contributing in their way because they're getting a stimulus and they're giving a response, and it's just this. They don't have the command of the audience to be a monologue. It's got to be in conversation with everything else. Otherwise, it's not relevant, or it's not on theme, or it's not on trend, or whatever it is. So there's that saying, control the memes of production. Like, how can you be so attuned to the memes of society in that world so that you can understand and be part of that conversation? Because we can describe more in a meme than we can in a 10,000 word thesis if people aren't listening. It's that whole concept of if you want to take people or lead someone on a logical journey, you tell them a story or write them an article, and they go start, middle and end. If you want someone to understand a concept or have a feeling, you draw a painting. Because in that single representation of the idea is infinite levels of nuance and tone and subtlety, and it's going from your presenting a research idea to a poem. There's the words of the poem, but there's also the cadence, there's also the emotion, there's also with your Dr. Seuss example, it's putting people back in the childhood and going, this is play, this is fun. All of those levels of nuance and colour can come into something that has all those different elements, right?
It's making me think about the fact that, and this is probably too big a thought, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we are facing problems that we cannot solve without a group, without collective potential. We can't. It's gotten so big and complex now that there will be no hero. There will be no Tony Stark that comes and solves all the problems. Like, we have to work together. And I wonder at some of this more collaborative energy that I see from younger generations. And mate, if I see one more article about Gen Z people being useless, which they are actually the opposite. It's 100% a projection from older generations. Like, I look at the younger generations, they work together, they are sensitive to the needs of the group. Oh, they're so sensitive about the things. No, they're out there working. They just also know that if the person they're working next to is having a really shit time, that's going to make it hard for anything to get done. So maybe we should make it not a shit time for that person over there. And I wonder if the hope that I feel for that generation is a direct response to the fact that we just keep seeing problems coming up that can't be solved by collective effort. Look at fucking COVID. That was impossible. There was no way that was going to be solved unless people did a thing together. Now, you can argue about whether those decisions were right and wrong, and as the research is showing, some of the things that we thought to do were potentially maybe didn't have the same impact we thought they were. However, the whole world was engaged in a conversation about doing something about this to both deal with the outbreak, but then to deal with the negative impacts. Like, every single group, even the groups that I didn't agree with, they were all engaged in what are we actually doing here? Because we're facing existential threats now. Like, we have to fix it up, Whereas, I'm doing the thing that all my friends joke about, which is it's not long before Stefan mentions the Industrial Revolution. But I'm going to mention
this is your Roman Empire.
Yeah, exactly. The Industrial Revolution, individuals could do a thing that completely changed the world. They were working together, but there were scientists that directly figured out how to make that valve do that thing there, and then that made this. So it was a group of people, but it was a very small group of people that did a thing that then changed the world. I just think now that the system is so complex now that it will take collective thinking. And I have deep hope in the collective thinking potential of younger generations, because I wonder if potentially our generations are a bit more like, I would like all the credit and the money, please. Please give
And that's
me
what
all
we've
the
been
things.
like told. That's told to value, taught to
Yeah.
value. Why then play grounded?
It's a great question. Why playgrounded? Because of that exact reason. Good question, Kate. It's like you know my business better than me. We think work in collaboration is totally broken. Oh, look at me saying a really
Yeah,
the thing that I said at the start.
I've just taken that.
Yeah.
That's going straight to the start
And
of the
now
episode.
I say a thing.
Thank you. Thanks, giving me the hook. Yeah.
But we do think that work and collaboration is broken because of all these reasons that we have gone on about. The system is set up based on industrial revolution ideas of creating machines that can produce a lot of product. That's how we think about work. That needs to get changed because the problems that we face now do not fit that model. They are so complex that they require creativity and collaboration to happen, and work has never held the frame for that to happen. Now, it just so happens that really smart people who have studied how the mind develops, and also theatre practitioners have studied a means by which groups do things together in a way that produces really good stuff. It is called play. It is completely misunderstood because people think of axe throwing or doing an amazing race. But actually, when human monkeys get together to do things and work on a thing, what they're actually doing is playing. And that is entirely possible to be completely embedded in your group and how you work. We know because we've done it in an organization. And so many problems, all the problems which people worry about, people leaving their job, people having fights at work that aren't healthy, people not showing up to work, people not really putting effort in, all of those problems, they're magic away because play is the mechanism in your brain that engages you to do something. Can I rant a little bit longer? We know this as humans because when we are not at work and one of our friends goes, come over to my house, I gotta clear the rubbish in the backyard and we'll put on a barbecue. You show up and not only do you get it all done, but you all know that you've got to kind of have fun doing it. Otherwise, why would people give up their time to hang out in a group of people doing it? So it's this thing where you do a task and you really enjoyed your day. And then the next day, Monday, I go to the office and it's the same thing. We've got to do a thing. But then people are like, but don't have any fun. Because if you have fun, you're being childish, blah, 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 all of those things. And we're removing the mechanism that actually focuses a group of people on doing a task really well together. And also not being absolute asshats to each other at the same time. Anyway, that's my rant. You like it?
I love it.
Okay.
That's great. I think let's finish off with maybe some rapid fire questions.
Oh, great. So I've got to learn to speak quickly. Great. No, not speak quickly, speak shortly. I'm going to do it.
How can someone go out tomorrow and better influence their world?
Become open to being influenced. Do that first.
What's the thing that's influenced you the most this week?
It was the market. It was the market because we were producing heaps of stuff, and then we turned to each other and we went like, why isn't this being engaged with? And then someone went, oh, it's too long. And then I went, oh, and then I had the first part of my brain that was like, you're wrong. And then as I was ranting about it, I was like, actually, you're right.
so not the Queen Victoria market.
Not the Queen Victoria market.
The general market.
general
Okay,
economy
yeah.
And the clients that we are working with
Okay, great.
gave us really great feedback where they were just like, the video that you sent is too long. I stopped listening after 30 seconds. And that really hit. Like, I sort of knew it, but then when someone I knew was like, it's just too long. What it did, influence is really, when it happens to you, it's like you're allowing this loving arrow to stab you in the heart. And then I have this moment of being like, I'm dying because I'm embarrassed because I made a thing that didn't work and I hate you a bit for not liking it. And then in the little arrow, a little rose grows and you're like, oh, there's a new idea. And I could hold on to my ego and argue with this person, or I could be like, actually, I think you're right. I think I am actually the wrong one here.
And then finally, if there was one piece of art that you would give to someone to say, this is what life is about, what would it be?
Other places you would go, Dr. Seuss. That's so boring of me, but it's true. That is, it's all in there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really love you, man.
I love you.
Yeah.
Oh, I love you.
Yeah.
I hope this has been useful in any way, because it has been for me.
Great.
So
that's what I hope for. I'm being changed by everyone I speak to, and I get changed by you every time we do catch up. But to put it down on tape, so to speak, and then be able to share it with others is really special to me. So thank you.
Oh, it's so nice being when people say they love you. Oh, that's influence right there. Oh, you said that props are allowed?
Oh, yeah.
So I went and got one of my roses from my rose garden. It's got lots of thorns on it.
Yeah.
So that's the perfect. So not only do I love you, but I actually had a gift to give you as well. So I win love.
You win. You win influence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks.